We'd like to welcome all of you to the public hearing portion of the open house tonight. My name is Dave Smith. I work with the UDOT Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS team, and I'll be helping to moderate and facilitate this public hearing. I'm going to walk you through how the schedule will go for the rest of the evening so that you're aware, and then the logistics of the public hearing portion of this evening. Before I walk through that, two important announcements. Or first, I want to make some introductions to just a couple of key team members, and then an important announcement about making comments tonight at the meeting. So first, let me just make sure you know who's sitting up here tonight, who will be listening to all of your comments, those of you who have filled out comment cards. Josh Van Jura, to my left, is the UDOT project manager for the Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS. And sitting next to Josh is Carissa Watanabe, who is UDOT's environmental lead on this EIS. And a lot of you probably spoke with Vince Izzo. Vince, if you're here, if you'd raise your hand. He may still be in the open house portion of the meeting. He's working with Josh on the EIS as well. So the open house still continues over in the lunchroom area, so that we may have people that will be joining us as they wrap up in there, or when you're done speaking, if you want to go back to the open house section, that will remain available to you until 8:30 this evening. So a little bit about this section, or this portion of the meeting tonight. First, in order to be on the list to share your comments with us tonight, you should have filled out a speaker form. If you did not fill out a speaker form and turn it in the open house, this is the last call for you to fill out one of those forms and provide it to us so that we can get you in the mix and an opportunity to comment tonight. At the check-in tables at the front of the open house section, there are comment cards at those tables. You can pick up a speaker form, fill it out, and just bring it to us over at this table right here, and we'll add you to the list of those who would like to comment. If you've already filled out a speaker comment form, we have it. We'll also be going in and making sure that any of you that just deposited it in the box in the last few minutes, that those get picked up as well. So again, last call if you would like to provide public comment tonight in this hearing portion of the meeting, to please go fill that out. Okay, let's move on. So let me just go through how this will go tonight, and then I'm going to turn some time over to Josh. So the format of the first part of this hearing will be presentation style. Josh Van Jura will provide about a 20-minute presentation overview of where we are with the draft EIS, with the open house tonight, and with the public hearing. He'll walk you through his presentation. This is presentation style. We ask you to just listen to his presentation, because then he'll spend the next 2 hours listening to you. So this is not a question and answer presentation. He will present the information, and then he'll return to his seat, and then we'll go to the official public comment period of the meeting, where you can come forward and share your comments. We ask that what we will do during that portion after he's done is I will come back up. I will pull 3 cards that have been submitted, and I will name the 3 people who are going to be speaking in order. and then you will come to the microphone that's right in front of me and is positioned right in front of Josh and Carissa, and you will have 3 minutes to provide your public comment. I will read your name and ask you to step to the microphone. So our court reporter, who's over here against the wall, she, for official record, as required by the process, she will be recording your name that I have on the card, and we'll be recording your comments that you make during your 3-minute time frame that you have to give a comment. We will have a timer on the screen so that you are aware of how much time that you have, and I will give you about a 20-second warning of when your time is about to expire. And the reason for this is so that we can give everyone who has signed up an opportunity to comment tonight. And we look forward to hearing all the comments that you would like to share tonight, but we need to follow that format in order to allow everyone who has filled out a form to be able to comment. All right, so we have our court reporter who will be recording your comments. We are also recording this and broadcasting it live on our Facebook feed. The recording of this will be available to view on the project website as soon as we can download it and format it. So as soon as tomorrow or in the next day or two. And we appreciate all of you who took the time to attend the open house. If you choose not to make a public comment during this session of the official hearing, we ask you to make sure you fill out a comment card, or you go on the website and fill out a comment in the comment form on the website, or you can send us an email through the website as well. But if you talked informally with those at our station, your comments do not count as official comments and will not be responded to in the final EIS. We need you to document those comments through the website comment form, through commenting tonight as part of this hearing, or through email, or the methods that are listed on the website. So we just want to make sure that you understand all the formal ways that you can provide a comment, because every formal comment we receive will be documented and responded to as part of the process. During the session where you will be commenting, Josh and Carissa will not be responding to your comments. They'll be listening and taking notes, and as I mentioned, all the comments you make will be responded to in the final EIS. If we have more speakers than we have time for tonight, we are prepared to extend our time a bit tonight. And if we surpass that expanded time tonight and we haven't been able to have everyone speak, then we would ask those who are not called upon to register for our virtual hearing. That's a week from tonight on the 20th, and we will cross-reference that registration on the website with those that didn't get a chance to speak tonight, and you will be first up in the virtual hearing a week from tonight if you do not get called tonight. We ask that if you did not sign in the attendance sign-in sheet, that you please do so. This will become public record, and we want to document all those that were invited to come and make comments at the meeting tonight. The sign-in sheets are near the doorway by the open house. With that, we just want to remind everyone that we are hoping for a civil dialogue tonight. So we ask for civility, we ask for decorum, we ask for cooperation, because those who have differing opinions are probably all here tonight and want to share those differing opinions. So while you may not agree with what one commenter has to say, and while you may have a differing opinion from someone else, We ask that you respect the time allotted to every person who gets up here and speaks, and allow them to speak without interruption for their 3 minutes, and that we show great respect for all those who have taken the time to fill out a speaker form and to get up and provide their comments about the EIS and about the draft EIS and whatever they would like to regarding the two identified preferred alternatives at this point in the juncture, or anything else that they would like to comment about. So we ask that we all respect each other, that we act with civility and decorum and cooperation. If we have instances of yelling or obscenities or threats, we will ask you to leave. And we'll ask you to kindly leave and provide an atmosphere for the rest of us to listen to all who have signed up and wish to comment. I'm sure that we can all agree on civility and decorum, whether or not we agree with all of the solutions that are on the table. With that, Josh, I'm going to turn over to you for about a 20-minute presentation, and then I will come back up and we'll start the oral comment period of the hearing.
Well, thank you, Dave, and thank you, everybody, for making time out of your busy schedules to come here tonight. I do want to say sorry. I know we started approximately 10 minutes late. We were trying to get the Facebook Live thing set up, but again, it's important that we get going. So tonight's a really exciting night for me, and I'm so glad that everybody's here to provide comment. I think you're all aware that, gosh, what was it, 2 Fridays ago on June 25th, we released the draft EIS, and that included 2 preferred alternatives. So again, we're really excited that everybody is here tonight, and that June 25th really started what is now a 70-day comment period. And tonight with this public hearing, and then next Thursday, like Dave mentioned, on the 20th, are really great opportunities to get feedback from the public. So I want to do a quick overview of the project. So over the course of this project, we actually evaluated 124 different alternatives. Is that better when I'm closer? Thank you. We evaluated 124 different alternatives to solve the project's purpose and need. And just a reminder, you've probably all heard me say this 1,000 times, but the purpose and need of this project is to solve the safety, mobility, and reliability problems on SR 210 from the 7-Eleven or the mouth of Big Cottonwood all the way up through the town of Alta. So that purpose and need really has 3 distinct parts, right? Safety, mobility, and reliability. So the safety component is really solved equally under the sub-alternatives because that really relates to avalanche mitigation, but also roadside parking and trailheads. So it's really those last 2, mobility and reliability. So mobility is really a measure of congestion as UDOT sees it. And so if we can decrease congestion, we increase the mobility on the roadway. And there's 2 parts to the mobility goal. There's not only the canyon mobility, but there's also mobility on Wasatch Boulevard for those PM peaks that are expected to extend by almost 250% by 2050. Mobility, as we define it, is really reliability in travel times. So if it normally takes you 30 minutes to get up to Alta or 30 minutes to get up to Snowbird, you should know that today it's going to take you that same 30 minutes. And that's really important for that understanding as a transit user. So it's really these last 2 goals, mobility and reliability, that the 2 preferred alternatives solve to greater or lesser degrees. So let's go into, there we go. So we started with the 5 alternatives, right? We had 2 bus alternatives, 2 gondola alternatives, and a cog rail alternative. and we narrowed that down to 2 for the draft EIS. And I think it's important to note that at the final EIS, we will narrow that down to a single preferred alternative. So this isn't a both situation. We will narrow it down to one alternative. And we thought it was important to get down to those 2 because they solve the purpose and need differently, but also they're so fundamentally different, right? They're different alignments, they're different modes, and really they have different pros and cons for both riders and the environmental impacts associated with them. So those 2 preferred alternatives, as you know, are the enhanced bus service in peak period shoulder lane, because that meets the mobility goal the best, but also Gondola B, sometimes referred to as the Kai alternative, which actually departs from North Little Cottonwood Road, because this alternative meets the reliability goal the best. So let's look at these 2 alternatives in a little more depth. Like I said, the enhanced bus service meets the mobility goal the best. And that's really because shoulder running buses provide the lowest travel time for a transit user. So you may have seen out there in the open house on the fact sheet that this has a 36-minute travel time. But I think it's important to note that that includes 12 minutes for the user to pull into a mobility hub, find a spot, grab their gear, walk over to the platform, and wait for the next bus. It's really only 24 minutes on the bus up to Alta. I mentioned mobility hubs. There are 2 mobility hubs with this alternative. There will be one at the gravel pit and one at 94 South and Highland with 1,500 and 1,000 stalls respectively. And a bus would depart each of these mobility hubs every 5 minutes with direct service to Snowbird or direct service to Alta. So they won't stop at bus stops along Wasatch. There'll be no bus stops in the canyon at popular trailheads. And the bus that's ultimately going to Alta will not stop at Snowbird, and nor will the Snowbird bus continue up to Alta. And I think that's something that's important to recognize with the bus alternative. Cost-wise, this option does have a capital cost of approximately $510 million, and it has a winter O&M cost of $11 million. So a couple of considerations. I got to point it this way. There we go. Sorry about that. Got to take a step back to press the button. So a couple of considerations with the enhanced bus in peak period shoulder lanes. I think that the 2 things I said in that last slide I really want to emphasize, right? 5-minute service and 36-minute travel time. If there's 2 things that are most attractive for somebody to take transit, it's to make that travel time as close as you possibly can to a private vehicle and have frequent service. And I think we all recognize the importance of frequent service, right? With every 5 minutes, if you miss the bus, you're probably only waiting 4 minutes for the next bus. That is not the same as waiting 15 minutes or 30 minutes for that next bus. And then the other part of that is the 36-minute travel time or 24 minutes up to Alta. In many situations, it's likely that the bus is actually going to be passing passenger vehicles in the general purpose lanes. And I think that's really attractive. If you're trying to go skiing, you're sitting there in your car and you're watching a bus pass you in the travel lane, that's a big benefit for users of that system. Another benefit, of course, these shoulders would not be used by buses in the summer, so it would provide additional safety for cyclists. I think we're all familiar with how many cyclists use the canyon, but there's also a large number of people who are just walking on the shoulder or running on the shoulder, that this would offset traffic additionally for those users also. Of course, this does have less visual impact than the gondola towers does. But you have to recognize that if by widening the road, you're adding more asphalt, right? You're adding more impervious surface, which does have an effect on water quality, but it also just makes the road wider, which does affect wildlife habitat. The final consideration is that 36-minute travel time, or 24 minutes in the bus, is calculated on dry pavement, because there's really no way to model your travel time at 1 inch an hour or 3 inches an hour or various windstorms. So we know that travel time will go up in periods of high precipitation. But also, even though that the shoulders are wider, the bus may be somewhat prone to crashes and slide-offs and just slow-moving vehicles that are in the way. So again, while there's more room to move around these, we do have to recognize these considerations associated with the bus. So Gondola B, the second preferred. This is the alternative that met the reliability goal the best. And gondolas are designed to work in mountainous environments, right? The 3S gondola system has been tested all over the world at numerous ski resorts, and it's in place for transportation purposes also. With this option, it would take either 55 or 59 minutes to travel up to Alta, depending on if you parked at, it's 55 minutes if you park at one of the 1,500 stalls at the base station, or 59 minutes if you park at one of the stalls at the gravel pit or at 94 South and Highland. Cost-wise, this does have a capital cost of $592 million per year, but the operation and maintenance cost is $7.6 million per year, which is roughly $3.4 million less than the peak period shoulder lane option. So again, while the initial cost is $82 million higher, that $3.4 million savings per year over a 30-year life cycle really turns out to be about the same life cycle cost. Travel time-wise, I think it's important to note that that 55 or 59 minutes includes that same 12 minutes that I talked about for the bus, right? Entering the mobility hub, finding a spot, yada, yada, yada. But in all honesty, this does represent an additional 19 minutes of travel time for potential users. So I think that's an important consideration that everybody should be aware of. Gondola considerations. So again, we talked about the 1,500 parking stalls that would be at the Kai base station, which reduces the need for bus service and reduces the operation and maintenance costs. But it does have the second highest capital cost of any of the 5 alternatives. It does have high visual impacts, and all of that can be found in the draft EIS of how that was assessed, along with other key observation points similar to the picture that's on the left. But I think it's also important to note that the gondola wouldn't require continuous construction up the length of the canyon like the peak period shoulder lanes would, right? We would have approximately 23 discrete tower locations. So it really minimizes the total amount of ground disturbing activity in the canyon, both for wildlife and watershed, but also the climbing boulders that are alongside the road. And again, the real benefit here, reliability-wise, is because it functions in a separate alignment, right? It's above all of the traffic. So if there is a slide-off, a crash, a slow-moving vehicle, the gondola provides reliable, consistent travel times for the people on it. So some of the alternative commonalities. So these 6 issues are being addressed whether the ultimate solution is the peak period shoulder lanes or the gondola. So let's go through these 6 quickly. Mobility hubs. So you heard me talk about mobility hubs. The 2 locations that were identified were at the gravel pit and at 94 South and Highland. Under the peak period shoulder lane, the gravel pit would have 1,500, 94th and Highland would be 1,000, but under the gondola B, that would be 600 at the gravel pit and 400 at 94 South and Highland. So significantly smaller, but again, those are the 2 locations that are being considered. Wasatch Boulevard. So UDOT did choose the 5-lane section for Wasatch Boulevard as the preferred alternative. But when working with Cottonwood Heights and hearing the concerns of the citizens of Cottonwood Heights, we've decided to implement the imbalance lane alternative first. And ultimately, we wouldn't build that 5th lane or the 2nd northbound lane until level of service in that direction reaches E or F, which is what UDOT defines as failing the level of service. And so until then, that extra space would basically just act as extra buffer between the back of the curb and the multi-use trail that's on the east side of the road, which I think will actually make a better trail experience for people using that when they're farther away from traffic. For snow sheds, we had 2 alternatives. We had snow sheds with a realigned road or snow sheds with berms. So UDOT did choose the snow sheds with the realigned road, so we are not proposing to build those essentially funnel mounds that would shorten the overall snow shed distance. So in this alternative, the snow sheds are about 700 feet longer because they do not have those berms, but the visual aspects associated with those berms, along with the construction and water quality impacts, led us to the decision that the realigned road was the better alternative. For trailhead parking, UDOT did choose to improve trailhead parking at 4 distinct locations. So if you're familiar with what was built at the Grit Mill last summer, imagine that, right? Paved surfaces with water quality buffers, restrooms, and those 4 locations would be the Gate Buttress, the Bridge Trailhead, Lisa Falls, and White Pine. So under this situation, we would also remove roadside parking within a 1/4 mile of these trailheads. And the reason we chose that option is we recognize there's a lot of people that use various parts of the National Forest that may not have dedicated parking areas today. So we didn't want to make those inaccessible to the citizens and users of the forest. Above entry 1, UDOT did select the no roadside parking. You probably can't see where that orange line points to, but it basically goes from entry 1 up through entry 4. And this is that parallel parking, right? Where users hopefully park 1 foot inside the white line. Many times they're on top of it or over it. And then the second area is near the Alta Wildcat, and that's being proposed to eliminate the roadside parking in those areas. Tolling, that is a picture of a tolling gantry if you don't know what it is. Tolling is being considered for all of these 5 options. And with these 2 preferreds, we do anticipate that fares on either the peak period shoulder lane bus system or the gondola would be subsidized. But we also need a way for, a little extra motivation for people to get out of their vehicles and onto one of these transit modes. And that would be accomplished through tolling. And that's honestly likely to be a combination of UDOT's existing express pass system in conjunction with license plate readers. So the public comment period, that started back on June 25th, AKA whatever that was, like 16, 17 days ago, and will extend for a total of 70 days up through September 3rd. For those of you that work on holidays, that is the Friday before Labor Day. So we started with 45 days. We heard a lot of public comment, and so we actually extended that yesterday. So if you do not make a public comment tonight that's captured by our court reporter, you can always make a comment on our website. You can email us. We have a phone number. You can send us a letter, but please make a comment. Obviously, you're at the open house and presentation. Dave mentioned the one we have next Tuesday that will be virtual. So again, I think that's a great opportunity for people that either did not feel safe coming out, with the kind of state of the world and the pandemic right now, Or honestly, we're just on vacation today or had a kid's soccer game. So hopefully we can get a lot more public feedback by holding 2 of these events. Process-wise, after September 3rd, we will collect all of these comments, we'll read them all, we will respond to them individually. And then honestly, we expect there to be changes to the draft. That's why it's a draft EIS. We hope that all of your public comment makes our document stronger. So we'll make those revisions, and then we hope to have a final EIS and a record of decision in winter of 21-22. But in all reality, that's probably the first quarter of 2022. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you everybody for your time. I hope this was useful, and I look forward to hearing your input.
Thank you, Josh. All right, we are going to jump into the official public comment period of the hearing. 3 quick things. One, just so if you don't give a comment tonight, you don't want to come up here and stand at the microphone, don't worry. These comments tonight are not given any priority over an email, a website comment, a letter, all the methods that are listed in all the materials that we have and that Josh just went through. They all are considered equally. So if you don't feel comfortable commenting tonight, please comment in one of the other ways because they're all given equal consideration. And we want those comments. So if you know people that couldn't come tonight and comment and can't come next week, please invite them to comment in all the other ways. As I read, I have 3 names here. As I read those names, all 3 are invited to come forward and get in line in order that I read them so they can go one after the other. When the 3rd one finishes, I'll read the next 3. And we'll go in that manner. We would ask you to please not touch the microphone when you speak. We don't know how many of you have been vaccinated or not. Josh and I are touching the same microphone, but we're both fully vaccinated, so we trust each other. We don't know how many of you haven't, so please be considerate of those who will come after you, because you might deposit a little bit of a spit on the microphone. So please just don't touch it, all right? We'll just try to keep everybody safe. And I also ask for your apologies and understanding if I totally butcher your name. I can't even pronounce Josh and Carissa's last names, so please just bear with me. All right, these are our first 3. Steve Woodward, followed by Eric Cron, followed by Chris McCandless. Steve, if you'd come up first, followed by Eric, and then followed by Chris, and then we'll go to our next 3. A timer again will be put on the screen. Let's see if we can get the timer up. There we go. So it's very visual. I'll give you a reminder about 30 to 20 seconds before the end of time. I take it you're Steve.
I'm Steve.
All right, Steve, please go right ahead.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I wanted to comment upon the Mobility Center in Sandy. I think it's kind of absurd. It's just going to move traffic to what is really a residential area right now. I think a better alternative would be have that Mobility Center down at the track station. I know I talked to you earlier about it, and you had reasons not to, but I really do believe that would be a better alternative. I'm a skier. I know something has to be done, but I don't think that's the answer. I think, again, you're just moving a lot of traffic that's going up to the ski area down to a residential area in Sandy. And also traffic that normally the bus stops for people along the way are now going to have to come down here. So that's going to create more traffic coming there. And again, I think a better alternative is just to have that mobility center someplace else. That's just my opinion. I wish you could have said more in your presentation as to the next steps too, because I think people would be very interested in to know what the funding of this is going to be, whether the ski areas are going to be required to pay anything for this, because there are going to be major benefits of it, but also the timing of it. I mean, you went as far as what the EIS mentioned, When I talked to you, it could be a few years out, but there's no definite plan. I'd like to know that. So that's my comments.
Thank you. All right, Eric.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody in UDOT and the community. This is a long process. I'm really happy to see so many people out here. I've been told in the past that traffic is traffic, but not all traffic is truly created equally. Induced demand. Road widening and parking expansion increases car traffic by increasing the supply of infrastructure, making it less likely for people to choose alternative modes of transportation along Wasatch Boulevard, which is mostly non-existent right now. Unsignalized intersections along multi-lane roads with design speeds greater than 35 miles an hour are inherently dangerous to local residents who need to turn left to egress and ingress their residence. 2021 fatalities so far are surpassing 2020 totals by a margin greater than 20%. And UDOT's goal to reduce fatalities to less than 200 fatalities by 2020 has already been a failure. The concession that UDOT has expressed to regards of local traffic along Wasatch Boulevard to the local community misses the main concern voiced by the community itself. Speed kills. And UDOT has shown an unwillingness to cooperate with the local community that depends on access to the urban segment of Wasatch, not only on peak ski season, but for daily life. This is a concern, the main concern. It's not the why. I really think that everybody wants to get to the canyons and enjoy the beautiful nature that we have up there, and we more than welcome that. It's an opportunity for the community to actually grow in a sustainable manner. But there has to be safety prioritized for the people that actually live there, not only during the ski times or for recreation purposes, but for kids to go to school, for cars that actually need to make a left turn in a daily basis. And if you look at the design of the road, you are creating something that's going to look eventually similar to what's already in front of the gravel pit, right in front of a residential area with many people that do not have any other way of access their neighborhood. Regarding the trail experience, it will be improved even better if the speed of the road is again reduced to 35 miles an hour and the noise is reduced as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Chris.
Good evening. My name's Chris McCandless, and one of the authors of the original Lakai Base Station plan. It's actually a real pleasure to see all of those who love the canyon here tonight to voice their thoughts. We all love Little Cottonwood Canyon. Please note, we're not proposing to be the entity to construct the base station. We are only preserving the site from development if it is chosen by UDOT. And to clarify some of the social media comments, no, we're not intending to construct 40 unit per acre apartment buildings or condominiums on our adjacent property. Our two existing applications show residential single-family homes that equal about 2 units per acre and meets the existing zoning requirements. We forwarded to UDOT a land preservation plan for the Gondola base station because we are certain that the gondola solves all the problems, especially providing dependable canyon access on a daily basis, and especially a secondary emergency access that's so dearly needed. The bus option requires building a 4-lane highway in Little Cottonwood Canyon, which will have significant detrimental impacts. The UDOT Little Cottonwood Road expansion would be to 78 feet, which doubles its current size and increasing it from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. The only way to do this is to excavate the steep northern slope and install miles of vertical retaining walls, ranging in height based on our calculations from 20 to 75 feet tall, and eliminates a lot of the spectacular scenery associated with that ride along the northern Canyon Road. In the areas where the mountain is blasted into submission, it will require over-excavation in places where the slope is steeper and the mountain less stable. This over-excavation will penetrate the hillside on a much greater scale in order to protect those constructing and then using the new roads. It would require over about, in our estimation, 200 vertical feet of excavation to stabilize the unstable rock and other dangerous aspects during construction process, which could take up to 8 years. This is massive. We feel that there are numerous other elements associated with building a highway system up Little Cottonwood Canyon Road, one that will take away significant iconic aspects, including that large boulder that everybody likes so much about just above the A gate. It will change the face of the canyon permanently and forever.
20 seconds.
By comparison, constructing a gondola would have significantly less environmental impact than the alternative option of an expanded highway. We'd like you to consider those when you're making and deliberating this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next three could come forward in this order, please. Bob Paxton, followed by Galen Benyon, followed by Dave Fields. Bob.
Mr. McCandless, I do appreciate your comments on the widening of the Little Cottonwood Canyon. One of the concerns I have is have there been enough sophisticated engineering studies to determine what exactly would happen to that road. Many of us can remember what happened to the Provo Canyon Road with landslides for 2 decades, and then ultimately gunite, which seems like it's halfway up the canyon, and we would all hate to have that up Little Cottonwood Canyon. I have a comment or two on from the Central Wasatch Commission. They don't seem to agree necessarily with what kind of transportation mode should happen, but I do appreciate their comment on this: visitor use capacity. The transportation alternatives being evaluated by the EIS have the potential to significantly increase the quantity of, and I underline quantity, of visitors accessing Little Cottonwood Canyon and what they do and when they visit. All of these alternatives pose a risk of overuse of Little Cottonwood Canyon, which could result in negative environmental, public safety, and water resource consequences. Additionally, overuse could negatively impact the visitor experience for both tourists and locals who seek to enjoy recreation and nature from unmanaged crowds. You know, this is something that probably has to be dealt with by the businesses, the ski resorts, but it is truly a factor which I think is desperately important. Another one is, I think that with all the marketing that goes on, we are marketing more for visitors than we are for residents within the state of Utah, especially along the Wasatch Front. And I foresee the busyness getting so bad that we as local people will not want to access these resorts, and we'll have to go someplace else to do this, similarly as we have with many of our national parks in southern Utah. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Galen.
Hi, I'm Galen Benyon, and I represent at the Utah Legislature this area. I represent Alta, Brighton, and 2/3 of Cottonwood Heights, parts of Holiday, Midvale, and Murray. And I would just like to remind UDOT of my constituents' requests for lowered speed limit on Wasatch Boulevard. This is in the Cottonwood Heights master plan for Wasatch Boulevard, and it's been there since 2019, so I know it's not news for you. And it's also part of Save Not Pave's grassroots effort of citizens. There are parts, it is a state road, but there are parts of Wasatch Boulevard on the other side of Fort Union Boulevard that do have lower speed limits. So I know that we can have a lower speed limit. I was concerned to see the plans for sound barriers. To me, what what Cottonwood Heights is asking is that Wasatch Boulevard be a boulevard, that it not be a freeway. So when I see the plans for sound barriers along the road, it just looks like a freeway being planned, which is not what Cottonwood Heights has been asking. As I talk with people even here tonight, I appreciate the great efforts that UDOT has made for several years, and also the Central Wasatch Committee and Commission. And I appreciate their pillars and reminding us that water is our ultimate thing that we want to preserve in the canyons. And I think that as I've talked with people here, that there are creative solutions, like what we do at Zion's Park, where people sign up for a shuttle, that if we really value the canyon and we don't want to make that kind of road improvements that would degrade the canyon, if we don't want permanent gondola there when maybe the snowpack won't be there in a couple of years the way it's going, which is not what any of us want. Maybe there are creative solutions that are less impactful, like what we have at Zion's, where there's shuttles, where there could be metering, where it doesn't have to cost so much money but might solve the problem. Thank you for all of you for being here, and thank you, UDOT.
Thank you, Representative Benyon. Dave.
Good evening. My name is Dave Fields. I'm the general manager at Snowbird. I've spent my life recreating and now the last 21 years working in Little Cottonwood Canyon, and I've seen firsthand what happens when it snows a lot, and that coincides with increased demand. We put up to 7,000 cars in Little Cottonwood Canyon on a Saturday in the winter. This is not compatible with the steepness and the amount of avalanche paths and how much snow we get in a short period of time in Little Cottonwood Canyon. We believe that cars and buses are not the answer because they get stuck in the canyon, just like the buses get stuck even though they have chains. They get stuck just like the cars. I work very closely with the operations team from UDOT, and they're amazing. And in one day, they pulled 8 buses up the canyon with an F-350 because they were stuck in the canyon, just on one day. And this is what happens when it snows a lot in Little Cottonwood Canyon. It's the most avalanche-prone highway in North America, and we need to think about a solution that doesn't involve rubber tires on pavement to get people up and down this canyon. The 1,000 people per hour is a self-induced parameter that UDOT has created. We would like to see more people using alternative transportation. Gondolas can move 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people an hour if you design to that spec. And I would love to see UDOT shooting for a much higher target for vehicle elimination in Little Cottonwood Canyon. Snowbird and Alta currently pay for our season pass holders and our employees to ride mass transit. With a bigger target and more capacity that Gondola could provide, our interest and our investment in this operation will go up exponentially. Snowbird is committed that we will continue to pay for our pass holders to ride mass transit. We would like to write a much bigger check because we do not believe private vehicles are a safe option or a reliable option. Our data shows that it will take 31 minutes to ride the gondola from the Lakai Bay Station to Snowbird, 37 to Alta. And the nice thing about gondola is that's every day, no matter what's happening on the road, no matter what rental car has slid off the road, no matter how hard it's snowing, the gondola goes up and down. So our guests and our employees can get up and down the canyon and know that it'll take 31 to 37 minutes. I want to thank UDOT. This is hard work you're doing, but on behalf of all of our employees and our guests, we thank you for what you've taken on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right, our next 3, Randy Skeen, if you'll come up and take your place at the mic, followed by Aaron, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, de Kaiser. I'm sorry if I butchered that. You'll be after Randy, and then George Vargas after Aaron. Randy.
Thank you. I was just going to sneak out, and you called my name. I'd like to echo what's been said to thank you folks. We've lived at the mouth of Little Cottonwood Canyon for about 15 years now, and I think all the residents up there have all lived through horror stories of cars, and where it gets so crowded, we can't get school buses out. We couldn't get an ambulance up there. I personally almost missed my father's funeral because I had to go down to the 7-Eleven and fill up with gas and try to get home. And I had to do that by going the wrong side of the road, honking. Of course, my honks were reciprocated with gestures and honks, people thinking, I guess, I was trying to ace them out of the resorts. I don't know which is best, but I don't believe a pavement is something that could work. The traffic is bad. I just don't know that having buses is going to make it any better. So that's one concern. The second concern is who's going to pay for it. I appreciate the comments from Snowbird. I guess they're going to chip in, but I think the ultimate cost is going to fall somewhere on us. And I'd really like to know what that is, how much, and where it comes from. But again, thanks for your hard work. This is a terrible problem for the residents. We love having out-of-state people come. We have friends come every winter to ski, and this is the best place in the world, I think, to live, right where I live in the canyon. So we want to make it better, and if it's a gondola, that's great. If somehow we can eliminate it with the traffic going up, that's great as well, but something does have to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Aaron.
My name is Aaron Kaiser. I'm a candidate for Sandy City Council. I serve our community as the co-director of Save Not Pave, and the chair of the Utah International Dark Sky Association, and chair of the Sandy City Sustainability Focus Group, all of which are following the EIS closely. I'm encouraged by all the people who have come out tonight to play an active role in our community. Thank you. And thank you, Josh, for all your hard work on this and the meetings that you've had with me. In a certificate course I took from MIT on smart city design, I learned that cities cannot effectively build their way out of a car-centric society. This is an especially important principle when applied to our valley's geography and clean air challenges. So, if we are smart, we will create and develop transit networks that incentivize people and provide options for improved mobility. UDOT should reconsider its two alternatives and wait to do anything other than express bus service without additional road building, just as Mayor Wilson commented today. It should also be done without additional parking garages, as those will induce demand and are wasteful when we already have numerous locations already available throughout the valley to be repurposed. The two proposed alternatives literally do the opposite of what we need by pointing more vehicles to the mouth of the canyon. Dave Field mentions getting cars out of the canyon, which I agree with, but it is not fair to push that traffic into our foothill neighborhoods. The public is up in arms about this, and yet UDOT refuses to collect zip code information so we locals know where the comments are coming from. This is at best irresponsible and at worst deceitful. Audience, please, when you're making your public comments, include your zip code. Locals do not want roadening, not on Wasatch Boulevard, not on Sago Lily, not the Highland Drive extension over Dimpledale or on Vine Street, not on 600 North, and so forth. Similar transportation and transit topics are being discussed and studied at our highest academic levels across the country. In fact, the University of Utah is home to one of the nation's leading transportation experts. I've met with him, yet the business interests of this project don't seem to care for the intelligent design ideas or have even bothered to do a capacity study for the canyon. And I should further this point, really, it is completely unacceptable that this is moving forward without a capacity study. For the fiscally conservative folks in the audience, consider the cost of these projects. Is the benefit of lessened traffic for 20 days a year worth the price tag, especially once you know who the private interests are that stand to make hundreds of millions of dollars? Something needs to be done, but we cannot have exhausted other options, including timed access, bus priority, carpooling incentives, and a properly enforced sticker system, rental car restrictions, amongst other possibilities like Representative Bennion mentioned. In closing, it is the design that makes all the difference. If UDOT widens Wasatch Boulevard, they should be held to their promise in the Cottonwood Heights City Council meeting for 35 miles per hour and switch their guiding principle of level of service to safety. That's what I'm hearing as I knock thousands of doors in the city, so I hope UDOT seriously listens to our voice and have roads that respect residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Great. George.
Thanks for having me. George Vargas. I'm also a board member of Wasatch Backcountry Alliance, so thanks for hosting this.
George, can you scoot forward just a little?
Thanks for hosting this public event so that we can share our thoughts. I want to reiterate the concept of capacity again. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but knowing what these canyons hold when we're putting another 1,000 people per hour, which could be 4,000 or 5,000 people on top of what's there now, is a concern. And the gondola could be full. We don't really believe that people will get out of their cars with the disincentives that are listed already, and so we're just going to see that many more people in the canyon on the busiest days. Regarding tolling, we're not quite certain why tolling isn't implemented now. That's something that could give a different perspective on the amount of cars in the canyon and shared ridership and the like. Directional traffic and coordinating with with planning in Big Cottonwood or other concerns we have. And importantly, there's some issues around the gondola that are a bit of a concern, and that regarding weather. The road has been criticized for its unreliability with regards to the tires on the road, but we also don't enforce traction requirements, and tire requirements are quite lax. Regarding weather in the gondola, lightning. I don't see lightning mentioned at all. That frequently shuts down lifts. Every time there's a strong frontal passage, lightning usually precedes it and can shut down things for quite a while. Crosswinds, as well as icing events, can affect the gondola quite a bit. Cost to ride seems to be lacking. We hear kind of some vague numbers sometimes, but a little more scrutiny towards what will it cost to ride this gondola. And in addition, artillery fire to control the canyons. The gondola will be closed when artillery is firing over to control the avalanche paths. If snow doesn't come down, the wires and cables and towers need to be inspected for reopening after artillery fire. So the gondola will not be running during those periods of time, and we're not sure what it takes to reopen the gondola and how that safety process works and who's in charge of it. In addition, interlodge. If there's an interlodge in effect, the gondola will not be running. That's stated clearly, I believe, under winter gondola operations. And in addition, the gondola will act as a tourist attraction inadvertently, and it will contribute to additional congestion in the canyons. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, George. Okay. Our next three, Dan Mills, followed by Richard, I believe that's Shutt, and followed by Brian Roberts. We'd ask, we've had some feedback from our Facebook Live viewers that they can't hear as well the comments from you, so if you'll just make sure you stand close to the microphone, don't touch it, but stand close to the microphone and speak clearly. That'll help those who are watching on Facebook Live. All right, Dan, followed by Richard, followed by Brian.
Dan Mills, Cottonwood Heights resident. I'm a member of the Planning Commission for Cottonwood Heights. I'm a local business owner, and I've lived here since the late 70s.
Our court reporter just needs to
Okay,
speak.
and I've lived here since the late 70s with a big break in the middle. I love the canyons. I'm a cyclist, I'm a skier, and I would ask that we honor the 35 mile per hour statement that was made to the city council. And as someone who lives across from the old mill, I have alternatives. I can get out of my neighborhood if I have to. There are other ways for me to get there. Many of our residents don't have that option. I would also add that if we're really genuine about this, we need to realize the competing interests here, and that there are certain people that will benefit from certain alternatives. And I applaud you for reaching out to other stakeholders. I'm sad to see that we don't have a larger UTA presence and more creative solutions from UTA. I'm also a little surprised that we don't have Doug Shelby from the Walker Family Trust, who has the interest in where the parking structure would be in the gravel pit, and those interests and those solutions are going to be critical. Additionally, if we're going to put the gondola there, we're going to ram traffic right into that parking structure, which means that what we're going to find 10 years from now is that the parking situation on those 30 days we're talking about really is not going to be appreciably different. It's just going to be a little wider. And ultimately, in my opinion, the fastest way to solve this problem is to incentivize people to get on the bus first. First bus equals first tracks. And if we can get people on those buses quickly, as close to larger transit area hubs as possible, I think it's possible to solve this problem without widening the roads. I think it's also important to recognize that if we do widen that road up Little Cottonwood Canyon, we're talking about over 50 mines that have existed that really would turn this into a giant Superfund site up and down that road. And the mitigation that it's going to take, the arsenic and all the other minerals that are involved in trying to disrupt what's there. Frankly, if we were building houses on that, if this were a planning commission issue, we would have all sorts of concerns about disrupting that. And the fact that it's going into a primary water source, that's a real issue. So as we look at who's going to benefit from the gondola, I think it's important to recognize if we're going to get as many people as possible to Alton and Snowbird, the best way to do that is buses, and lots of them. I recognize that there have been a couple days where there have been slide-offs with the buses, and they do occasionally need some help. But ultimately, the buses were discussed at 5-minute intervals, and UTA quietly has admitted that they could do them as fast as 3-minute intervals, which would get dramatically more people than what we could ever get from the gondola. Plus, it can be a flex solution, which means that you can turn it off. I rode my bike up there this morning. There's no reason that a gondola would be used today. It would have sat there gathering dust, the number of people that were in the canyon, and frankly, all day long, I don't think you would have had more than a couple dozen riders. Let's not memorialize the solution for the 30 worst days of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Richard.
Stoddard, thank you for this opportunity and for the work that you guys have put in to getting this hopefully off the ground, or on the ground, whichever you decide to do. I live in Granite Oaks, which is right on the edge of where all this is going on. And I start out with one first question. We're backing up on a property owned by the Spain company. And I haven't had any mention of this at all. Do the current owners of Lakai own that property as well? Have you guys looked into that? And because that's where you're showing the parking facility being. And our concern about that is that that property has an easement through our development. And easements go with the land, not with the people. So the question that I'd like you guys to answer is, are we going to have traffic coming through our development because that easement exists? And nothing has been addressed as far as we're concerned. The other question is, there's a lot of money being handled here, that's going to be going back and forth. And are you guys putting in for your share in terms of paying for this project from both the owners of Lakai, Snowbird, and Alta? Dave said he'd be willing to pay more money. He's going to be willing to pay for more money because they're going to make more money. This is not exactly a giveaway. And one of the things that was mentioned is the paving of of Little Cottonwood Canyon Road. While none of these things may be optimal, that seems to be the best alternative, only because as a biker and a former skier, it would be nice to have the local people have something to benefit from for this, as was mentioned before, because you really, unless you're really great, biking is not an option at this stage of the game on Little Cottonwood, and it would be wonderful if we had something else that we could use that will benefit the public as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Brian.
Hello, my name is Brian Roberts. I live in the area, zip code 84124. I don't think any of the ideas will help. I think you're just trying to find ways to get more people at the same time up the canyon. As long as you have the same number of people going in the cars, and it doesn't matter which way, I think you would have to solve that with tolling. In other words, people that go up the canyon only are essential, or they're canyon people, they're hikers and so forth, but they're not allowed at the ski resorts. If the car is found there and they don't have the pass, they're ticketed. We could essentially eliminate the parking lots of the ski resorts and have everyone go by mass transit. That would significantly help the canyon. Of course, the residents would be allowed to go up and they would have a canyon pass, an annual canyon pass. I'm actually in favor of the train. I know you voted against it. It's the best option. The problem is you're comparing apples to oranges. It's approximately $600 million. These others are $600 million, but then it's $400 million more to connect. But you can't really say it's this much more because you're getting so much more because that route would go all the way, I believe, down 9400 South. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. I lived in New Zealand for a number of years, and they have a canyon similar to this called Milford Sound. They're very famous in the Fiordland. If you do a Google search on transport in Milford Sound, it's on Wikipedia, you'll find that they have had several ideas, such as one called SkyTrail, which was a gondola system. The government was smart and voted against it because it's an eyesore. This is going to be very ugly, this gondola. You've got a 37-minute ride. You've got capacity for 20 people up there. You've got no controller, driver, a person on board. We live in a day and age where people get angry. Only 20 people can sit, others are standing. People carry guns and they're going to be drinking. I wouldn't want to be stuck in the air. It'd be terrible. Anyways, the windows are going to be dark. Anyways, my brother carries a gun everywhere. He drinks. I wouldn't want to be up there with him. The train is the best option. If it can't be the train, then the bus. But it's got to be mass transit. You've got to stop the people going up the canyon unless they are essential, or ticket them. Everything mass transit, the train is the best.
Thank you, Brian. Our next three are invited to come forward. We'll start with Brad Rutledge. After Brad will be Jeffrey Heath. And after Jeffrey Heath will be Jason Erickson. And again, just a reminder to stand close to the microphone for our Facebook Live friends and for our court reporter.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Hey Josh, Dave, you're here to protect UDOT. I really appreciate that. My name is Brad Rutledge, by the way. I'm with Wasatch Backcountry Alliance. Yeah, bring it on. We hosted a podcast series that was a Facebook Live event. We had 7 episodes, so 7 hours of just live interviews with people like Josh and UDOT, Chris McCandless representing the gondola, UTA, et cetera. And I was trying to think about what to talk about with my comment if I got called up, so thanks for pulling me up. And great comments, by the way. the one resounding takeaway I came away with after doing our podcast series, because it was a deep, deep dive with all these stakeholders that were really interested in advancing their goal. UDOT, of course, interested in doing what's best for all of us, is a big takeaway of, let's get back to the goal, right? What are we trying to accomplish? And it was concerning a little bit in that if you ask the CWC board, what's the goal, what's the purpose, you'd probably and likely get different answers. And so when we start with what's the goal, which is where this started, somehow we've gotten into all the weeds and the details. We've forgotten about the goal and the purpose. And so it's not a tourist attraction, right? It's not an amusement park. It's how do we improve the traffic mobility going up Little Cottonwood Canyon. And I think when we stop and think and remember that's what we're trying to accomplish, we're gonna, and we could all get on the same page, we're gonna elevate the conversation. The other thing that's really concerning is when we take a look at the potential solutions is the unintended consequences. So capacity has been brought up by a few people. And if we have these systems that can send 1,000 to upwards of several thousand people up Little Cottonwood per hour, and we haven't at the beginning of this process defined how are we going to limit what that current capacity is, which is, you know, we have a capacity cap today, which is parking. Once we start adding more people to it, it's gonna ruin the experience if you're at the resorts, you're in the backcountry, you're on the roads, you're on the gondola. We have to be very careful about what we do. So we need to step back and reevaluate what's the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish, and what are those consequences so we don't get into trouble when down the road. Finally, WBA really believes that we haven't given buses a good chance. We have not funded buses and all the kinds of systems that could make going up Little Cottonwood Canyon successful. We've seen it in other areas. Dave, I know I'm out of time. And we've seen this work for events and other things. We should give those things a chance before we invest in widening the road or installing a gondola. That's my final comment.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you. Jeffrey.
My name is Jeffrey Heath. I live on the corner of Wasatch Boulevard right across from the fire station. And so I'm a resident who has some understanding and is affected by what goes on. It's also a good thing that I'm not running for office for reasons that will become apparent. Mr. McCandless's comment about the problems of bus construction are correct. And at the same time, an acknowledgement that you made in the course of outlining the prospective benefits for the buses actually demonstrated that the assumptions on which the benefit calculation was made is clearly false. Any calculation of bus transit times that assumes that a dry road, one simply has to ask how often is the road all the way dry all the way to Alta during the ski season. The gondola actually meets, if you define your goals as mobility and reliability, the gondola actually meets both. And it's the only one that actually does meet both consistently. Now, looking to the future, the passion of everyone in this room is absolutely understandable. But the reality is the demand for use is not going to go down, and the demand is already there. The state's population is a lot higher than it used to be, and it is growing. The country's population is a lot higher than it used to be, and we get more visitors to this state than we used to get. I think it's going to be difficult to attempt to turn the clock back through regulatory force. The question is how we handle the future reality wisely and prudently, and it's a question of finding the best trade-off, because there is no ideal and no perfect solution. I believe that if we shoot for reducing the number of vehicles in the canyon total, that points to a gondola system. The buses have a negative impact on air, water, and noise, even aside from all the engineering problems of trying to widen the road. And any attempt to increase buses without some sort of shoulder is absolutely unrealistic in my view. The gondola actually has the lowest environmental impact. It may improve the water quality. It will certainly improve the noise quality and reduce emissions within the canyon, and it's the only way that will ultimately allow limiting traffic in the future. We need to learn the lesson from Switzerland. There are people ahead of us who are years ahead of us who have figured out the best trade-offs to resolve these problems. Traveled at Ceremont, below the Matterhorn, and see what they've done. And I assure you from personal experience that they have not destroyed the natural beauty of that place. I would suggest that if a gondola is adopted, that they would consider a stop at Tanner's Flat. I'm running out of time. The resort operators obviously should pay part, and how it should be organized to attempt to make it into a profit-making venture, of course, requires a lot of detailed work. But thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Jason.
My name is Jason Erickson, Cottonwood Heights. It's nice to see this data that you have showing a viable alternative without the expansion of the roads or the gondola system. It's a shame that it's not up there right now. I think we can also learn from Squamish with the Sea to Sky gondola being cut 2 years in a row. That is a huge potential flaw. The gondola has been cut back-to-back years. This would be a large infrastructure project that would bankrupt us. This is being funded by taxpayers for the resorts. Increasing the bus usage has the same time as the gondola, and it solves one of the problems, which is congestion. But the issue is people. We need better education into why to use mass transit, because right now we're looking at the symptoms and not the cause. It's people don't want to carpool, people aren't getting together, and how do we change the mentality to get everyone together into mass transit in either way, so that they're not going to say, I want to leave when I want to be there when I want, and I want to be able to grill when I want. So I think we need to work on education and alternatives to work with buses without expansion of the roads or the gondola to keep the current environmental state. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Our next three commenters, if they would like to come up in this order: John Adams, David Tillotson, and Ryan Ramba. John.
Hey there. Thanks, John Adams, Cottonwood Heights. Although safety, mobility, and reliability have been addressed, UDOT has neglected to include a little Cottonwood capacity study in the EIS for both the alternatives. Guess you've heard that a few times tonight. UDOT has stated that since SR 210 feeds traffic and people into the jurisdiction of the Forest Service, that it's up to the Forest Service to do a capacity study if they have the funding and resources to do so. UDOT states Forest Service said they will not do a capacity study for this project, and further that UDOT is not concerned with doing their own capacity study. So from what I understand, no capacity study is going to be done as part of the EIS. I feel this is completely irresponsible and a slap in the face to the future health and sustainability of Little Cottonwood and our drinking water. Unlike freeway projects that UDOT manages where freeways continue to flow in and out of our state for the benefit of all, this project is forever increasing capacity into a finite box canyon. It's increasing capacity to move both cars and people with the bus option, and to increase capacity of people with the gondola option into a box canyon, which has both the physical and environmental limitations. Rushing to build out the permanent and irreversible infrastructure today without understanding and defining the limits of the canyon is a gaping hole in the entirety of the UDOT environmental analysis, regardless of the tolling ideas that have been put out. With water scarcity already happening today and the population projected to grow from, I've heard, 3 million to 5.4 million in the next 30, 35 years, how in the world are you able to move forward with this project to increase capacity into the canyon without a true capacity study? Regardless of how big our state grows, you can't deny the resorts cannot grow unlimited. the vehicles, that's cars and buses, cannot grow in the canyon unlimited, and the amount of people in the canyon at one time cannot grow unlimited. It's time we see the future of the Wasatch through the lens of how we enable it to thrive versus trying to grow our economy at the expense of this finite resource. We need a comprehensive capacity study to be completed and accepted to determine if this project should move forward. Growth for the sake of growth can no longer drive our decisions. We already grew, and we need to change the narrative on how we thrive before we blow past our environmental boundaries and have to start taking things away from people just to enable this area to survive. Thanks.
Thank you, John. David.
My name's David Tillotson. I'm a resident of Little Cottonwood Canyon, just east of Lakai. Many of my comments have been stated tonight already, but all in all, the gondola is a permanent response to an interim problem. We're talking about 15 days a year where there is an issue, and I agree. And I bought my house knowing that there will be days that I cannot return to my house if I leave for a 2 to 3 hour window. Tough. I signed up for that. Give buses a chance. Don't widen the roads. Incentivize riders, direct access throughout the Salt Lake Valley to both Snowbird and Alta and the other Brighton and Solitude resorts on the Big Cottonwood side. I like the idea of first rider, first tracks. Also incentivize carpools, not just 2 people in a car. We're talking 4 or 5 people in a car. Also on the impact summary, rather than just take UDOT's numbers as facts, I would like to see the exact assumptions that are used in the impact summary, specifically as it relates to operational costs. Bus technology is likely to improve over time. The gondola option is you're making a 50-year bet. I would like to see it's not a fixed $11 million every year that buses are going to be. I see electric buses, I see buses changing over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I also have a big problem with public dollars used for private enterprise. If the resorts want the gondola so bad, make them pay for it, make them pay for the upfront cost, not just the rider cost. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Ryan.
Hello, my name is Ryan Rambo. I'm a software engineer and I live here in the Salt Lake Valley. In software, there are certain qualities that are hallmarks of great engineering. 4 of those are scalability, extendability, reusability, and refactorability. I'm here to point out that on top of other flaws, the gondola meets precisely none of these hallmarks. Scalability means that as usage grows or shrinks, it should be easy to add or subtract the necessary resources to keep things performant. The gondola is not scalable. It has a set number of cabins and therefore a set capacity. If there are more people, it cannot grow its capacity to accommodate. And likewise, if there are only 2 people, it cannot lower its capacity, and therefore will use roughly the same amount of energy and cost the same to run regardless of usage. Extendability means that you can easily add additional behaviors as the needs arise. The gondola is not extendable. It will have 2 stops, and it will only ever have 2 stops. So if parking becomes untenable, which it already does, at certain times of year at the White Pine Trailhead or the Gate Buttress, it is impossible to add stops to address these issues. It will also always need to be loaded and unloaded at one location. This will be a bottleneck. There's no option for extending the loading to multiple locations out into the valley to distribute the loading process. And you won't be able to extend the gondola to also service Big Cottonwood. Reusability means that it can serve multiple purposes or the same purpose in multiple locations. The gondola is not reusable. It will perform exactly one function for one type of user in one location. You can't take a gondola cabin and use it to help transport people to a Real Salt Lake game, for example. But what's worse is that the gondola is slated to use $500 million taxpayer dollars to service a single type of mountain recreator, the resort skier. My use of the Wasatch spreads across multiple activities and through all 4 seasons. I come to the Wasatch to backpack, trail run, bike, climb, hunt, and ski, both at resorts and in the backcountry. The gondola will only ever fully support one of these 7 activities. Refactorability means that if you need to change how a task is performed, you can make those changes with minimal effort. The gondola is not leveraging the refactorability of our existing system. We already have a road up the canyon. The work of creating the ability to transport people is already done. All we need to do is adjust how that system accomplishes its task, not put time, money, and effort into building an entirely separate, inferior system. So what solution is a hallmark of great engineering? It's not your other alternative either. We don't need to keep paving paradise by widening roads and creating huge trailhead parking lots. We just need to refactor our transportation system away from inefficient individual vehicles and towards bulk transportation. This can be done right now, quickly, and with our existing roadways by discouraging individual vehicle transportation and incentivizing group transportation. Don't allow any vehicles up the canyon during busy times and provide a well-run, comfortable bus system that people want to use. Without the individual cars on the road, there is not a need for paving a new lane up the canyon. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, our next three commenters, Timothy Hallbeck, followed by Bob Boner, followed by Daniel Kovac. Timothy? Okay.
Those of you who are accustomed to me speaking, I won't be telling any jokes tonight. Not to disappoint you guys. All right, let's see here. First of all, thank you all for all the work you've been doing for the past 2.5 years. I've been coming to these meetings for a long time. To see as many different presentations that you have, to much detail on all the different things going on. Really, really appreciate it, and all the one-on-one conversations that we had earlier tonight. I appreciate it as well. Building on the previous comments, there is one piece of information that at least 4 pieces have mentioned so far that I didn't see as well. We do have solutions, and we have capacities related to those solutions. What I've not seen is exactly how many parking spaces are there at each of the different mountain resorts. What is the mountain capacity currently for each of those resorts? And how is that expected to change over the next 5 years and over the next 10 years? Because whatever solution we decide on, whether it's the road or the gondolas or anything, we need that capacity planning. And the one question I couldn't get a solid answer to from the different people I talked to is, what are exactly those numbers? So if you don't have all the numbers, you can't come up with a pretty good solution in that respect. Let's see. My personal recommendation, I would say, if we're going to do the widening the Wasatch Road to 4 lanes or 5 lanes or whichever it is, let's not make the same mistake we made on Highland. I live off of Highland right next to Creek Road. And as Mr. Eric Cron, who spoke earlier, has pointed out many times, if you have a clear line of sight and you have a very wide road, people are going to exceed the speed limit. And the more distance vision you have, the faster they tend to go. When things are gentle and winding, when your visit is limited, whether it's because of the turning or because you have center trees and that kind of thing, it actually brings the speed down. So I would hope that when we're doing the expansion on Wasatch, we bear that in mind. There are a couple of places where it's a drag strip. And when we widen it to 4 lanes there, it's going to get worse. So let's keep that in mind and figure out what we can do to keep vision a little bit limited to try to keep those speeds down. Let's see. No, that's it. Everyone's covered everything else, so thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. Bob.
Hello, my name is Bob Bonar, and I'm a long-term Cottonwood Heights resident. And I want to start by thanking UDOT and really everyone here tonight and everyone who's given input and feedback into solving this long-standing transportation issue in Little Cottonwood Canyon. I see it that we're studying it and talking about it as a huge win, so I'm very appreciative. Thank you. I worked in the canyon for 50 years. During much of that time, I was directly involved in avalanche control at the ski resorts and avalanche procedures on State Highway 210 in Little Cottonwood Canyon. For years, I was also a member of the Salt Lake County Volunteer Fire Department at Snowbird, responding to highway and other canyon emergency situations. These jobs have given me a unique perspective in dealing with the Canyon Road, which is often called the most dangerous highway in North America. For example, dealing with 1,500 hungry and tired skiers all night due to a road closure. Or what do you do with the poor guy who's having a heart attack while the highway is closed and it's snowing too hard for a helicopter evacuation? Several times we responded in the middle of the night to a car accident or a slide on the highway with an increasing avalanche hazard, risking the lives of everyone involved. Very scary stuff, having done it a few times myself. Based on my experience, the gondola is the only solution that solves these long-standing public safety issues and improves access. The gondola provides safe uphill and downhill transit during natural disasters such as fire, rock slides, or avalanches. The gondola is much less intrusive than adding a third lane to the highway. The gondola will not close every time there is a car, truck, or bus slide off the road or accident in the canyon. And the gondola takes cars off the road and improves air and water quality. And lastly, the most important thing for this old avalanche control worker is that the gondola provides safe up and down transit during high avalanche hazard. Adding the third lane allows more cars and buses on the road, thereby greatly increasing the avalanche hazard index on our already dangerous highway. So, running out of time, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to give input here and look forward to someday seeing a nice improvement in transportation in the canyon. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Daniel.
Hi, my name is Dan Kovach, and I've lived in Cottonwood Heights for a number of years, and including time in the early 80s before the city was incorporated. I'm also a season pass holder of Snowbird for a bunch of years, and a former employee, lifetime skier. Seen a lot of changes in this valley, and while I recognize some things are driven outside of our control, I do believe the choices we make do matter. As a resident in this area, I want to talk about what's important to me, and I hope some of those priorities match most of yours in some way. I value in reduced priority clean air so I can breathe, access to water so I can drink and maybe water some plants, snow because I love the four seasons, especially winter, and scenic beauty because it makes me happy. You'll notice I didn't say being able to get to Snowbird in under an hour on the morning of a powder day. I didn't because I can be patient and wait my turn to get up there, and I know where to go later in the afternoon and still get my freshies. And if I really need to get up there on a Saturday powder morning and the road is jammed, then I know how to bide my time and get up there eventually. Even on the more miserable traffic days, it's still so much faster to get to Snowbird than to get to major ski areas from major metropolitan areas in every other part of this country. Think Denver, San Fran, Seattle, New York City, Boston. What's the problem? I do not want to give a free handout to those businesses who would steal the scenic beauty of Little Cottonwood Canyon to enrich their pockets. Those people know how to get rich, lining their pockets, and then take their millions to other unspoiled areas. Areas that are unspoiled because they haven't had a chance to ruin them yet. What's that saying? You don't poo where you eat? So, what would I love to see? I'd love to see UDOT and Salt Lake County and UTA develop some sort of a Zion Canyon-style bus service model employed in both Little and Big Cottonwood Canyons. Oh, we got that one too. Let's get relatively continuous, non-polluting bus service. Remember, we've got extensibility and we've also got, future technology here. With increased parking, going 7 days a week, up and down the canyon, 365 days a year, along with tolls on both roads. Let's give folks an option they can count on. Convenient bus service, not 4 runs up and 4 runs down every once in a while. Let's turn folks' behavior around. Once we can count on buses, we'll use them more, not just to canyons, but everywhere. And we'll start enjoying, the benefits of public transportation, clean air, clean water, snow days again, because we'll do something about global warming. And the buses won't make money right away. But did Amazon make money right away? No. Did Uber make money right away? No. But they will eventually, and we will change, and then we can continue living and enjoying this state. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next 3 commenters, Eric Campbell, Ellen Burrell, and Randy Long. Eric is first. Is Eric here? Or did I not pronounce that right? Eric Campbell? All right. We will set that aside. All right, Ellen, you come right ahead, and after Ellen, we'll go with Randy Long.
Hi there, my name is Ellen Burrell, and I live in Cottonwood Heights. And I am here to talk about transportation as it pertains to Wasatch Boulevard expansion. And I appreciate UDOT's focus on improving the transportation and the mobility and reliability of the 2.4 miles of Wasatch Boulevard SR 210 through Cottonwood Heights. And I also feel that the focus on a metric of level of service is happening at the expense of the quality of life and the safety of a community that is all residential through that area. I've come to learn in the last few years that this type of road widening is what is happening throughout the residential areas of Salt Lake County. And so I want to go on record to state that I think that there are other forms of moving commuters that would be far more efficient and good for the environment, especially in a time of drought. We do not want to lay down more asphalt unless it's absolutely necessary. So more asphalt and more parking lots both induce demand, and induced demand brings more VMT, vehicle miles traveled. The problem that my organization, Save Not Pave, has with all 3 of the main elements of the Little Cottonwood Canyon EIS, the gondola and the additional lane up Little Cottonwood Canyon, and also the widening of Wasatch Boulevard from its existing state of 2 to 3 lanes to a 6 or 7 lane expansion, because the shoulder lanes are designated for use by express buses. So anyone who thinks that a 3-lane imbalance sounds pretty benign, you need to look at the brass tacks, and that is that where it shows a bicycle lane in the diagrams, that will be a shoulder utilized by express buses. So on any given day, there could be 3 private vehicular lanes of traffic running and 2 express bus lanes. But transit only works when drivers are incentivized to use it. And the more we widen the roads throughout Salt Lake County, the less incentive motorists have. If they can drive everywhere they want to go and get to parking lots everywhere they want to go, they are not going to lower their vehicle miles traveled. We need safe roads that incentivize pedestrians through numerous crosswalks, and buffered bike lanes. And until people can ride transit and active transportation to run errands, they are not going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Randy.
Yes, I'm Randy Long. I'm another longtime resident of Cottonwood Heights since '69, and I'm a former skier myself, and I'm a former outdoor skier, I mean, and therefore I know the problems of Little Cottonwood Canyon some, and Big Cottonwood too. Both canyons need more slow lanes bad on the uphill side. That's all we need. More slow lanes, okay, more guardrails. Other than that, Wasatch Boulevard needs footbridges or tunnels under it. Draper City has several tunnels under their major roads, and they work perfect. I mean, foot tunnels, whatever. All the others just extra big culverts, so therefore they can't cost that much either. So we need that consideration. That is all. I'm an avid hiker and camper myself, and have been for a long time member of the Wasatch Mountain Club and several other wilderness organizations, as my badge implies here. So again, we need to consider that wildlife is another problem that has not been addressed tonight, not very much anyway. If we do widen Wasatch Boulevard, wildlife's going to go poof. It's going to go right out of here. The whole area is critical deer habitat during the winter months, especially, and for other animals as well. I've seen squirrels, chipmunks, snakes even, a number of them. So again, we need to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, our next three commenters up, if they'd like to come forward: Leslie Kovac, Robert Jacobs, and Dell Draper. Leslie, you're first.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Kovac. I've lived in Cottonwood Heights for 36 years. I'm here to talk about $592 million of Utah state taxpayers' money that is going to support 3 businesses. Those would be Alta, Snowbird, and CW Properties. This is a direct funding of their business models to improve their operations, their profits. And why are we as taxpayers funding this shiny object called the gondola? It's disguised as an environmental solution. What concerns me as a resident of Cottonwood Heights and a season pass holder of Snowbird is the amount of traffic that will be directed to Wasatch Boulevard to support the profits of these businesses. In the time that I've lived in my home on Wasatch Boulevard, I have watched our homeowners live through ski traffic that's become unruly and rude to the homeowners in the area. Speeds continue to increase on Wasatch Boulevard, endangering bicyclists and pedestrians alike. In fact, Wasatch Boulevard has become a division of the residents on the east side of Wasatch from the larger Cottonwood community. UDOT's proposed expansion of Wasatch Boulevard to either the 3-lane imbalanced or the 5-lane preferred will increase traffic volume and speed and further isolate my community. I would suggest that it be more of a recreational asset, that UDOT use the $51 million cited in any of the alternatives to redesign Wasatch, to make it useful for the people who live there and make it remain a beautiful road to our recreational areas. I do not want proposed high-speed freeway from Alta to Snowbird, which only benefits tourists and not the residents. I am concerned, in addition, that the cities of Granite, Sandy, and Draper seem to have let Cottonwood Heights shoulder the burden of the redesign of Wasatch. Currently, the expansion to the High T and 94th could expand further south, allowing more developments like the proposed Ivory Homes near Pepperwood. Many of the developments will be allowed where there is no transportation currently, except the use of private vehicles, which encourage wider roads and higher speeds. I ask UDOT to consider other alternatives other than expansions, which could be better used for more transit. To the people who live on the east side of the Salt Lake Valley, to move easily and efficiently to the university areas. Look at ways to work with the people who live along Wasatch. Reduce traffic, noise, increase accessibility to our city and community. If nothing else, reduce the speed on Wasatch to 35, as it is on the south side of Little Cottonwood Canyon. So, in closing, please stand up for the citizens who live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Robert Jacobs. Robert?
Hi, my name is Robert Jacobs. I'm a citizen of Cottonwood Heights. I just wanted to say that I've been to several of these public comment hearings about this particular project. The first one, we were told this process was to be a new way of developing a project. The community mainly affected by the project was to be involved in the process from the start. We were offered the possibilities of things like a beautifully landscaped roadside area containing things like walking paths, off-road bike paths, lower speeds. What's the rush to travel our 2 little mile stretch of road? It's 60 seconds, the difference between 35 and 50 miles an hour. I spent way longer than that just trying to get out onto Wasatch Boulevard. Cottonwood Heights residents overwhelmingly rejected more lanes for Wasatch Boulevard. We want to see it more like the southern part of Wasatch Boulevard, south of 9400 South. Excuse me. In my opinion, Gondola B is the most egregious solution possible. It results in more vehicular traffic to our community, fewer parking spaces at the transportation hubs, which are designed to handle the increased traffic, and 1,500 new stalls in the middle of our community with limited access and no planning to handle the increased traffic. I see no plans to encourage the use of the gondola. According to your statistics, 2% of the people currently use the bus. What is being done to incentivize the gondola? Anything that would cause people to use the gondola would more easily allow them to utilize buses. I would suggest a more phased approach to this whole development, starting out by applying a toll at the canyons to improve bus service, including reduced fares subsidized by the tolls at very little cost to the taxpayer, and see how that works before we try to decide whether we need a gondola or additional lanes. The real problem we're trying to address is the slopes are already overcrowded and less enjoyable. These solutions do nothing to alleviate this real issue. It can only be addressed by limiting the total skiers allowed on the slopes, not providing ways to exacerbate the real problem, making it possible for even more skiers to reach the slopes. Take a hint from the National Park Service and see how they attempt to deal with overcrowded national parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Dell.
Thank you. Dell Draper. When I was 10 years old, my family built a cabin up at Alta, and because of that, over the ensuing decades, I've gone up and down that canyon thousands of times, and I have a couple of observations on the road. First, I would say the existing road works probably 99% of the time. It works in the spring, the fall, it works in the summer, even at the worst of Oktoberfest or the height of Oktoberfest. There's really only about 40 days a year it doesn't work, and that's when it's powder or a beautiful holiday, and a lot of people are trying to get up at once. Some people have said that was 20 days. I don't know what the real number is. But the funny thing is that even on those days, even when it takes 45 minutes to get from 7-Eleven to the mouth of the canyon, once you're in the canyon, the traffic starts to flow. It may take about a mile up the canyon, but at that point, the traffic starts to flow. So I think you do not need to add another bus lane in that canyon to get, if you go with the bus route, to make it work. You'll have, with tolling, you'll have reduced cars, and the buses can get up there faster. Now, that is not the case with Wasatch Boulevard. Wasatch Boulevard's a terrible, terrible bottleneck, and I don't know how you do it. You need to get some way for those buses to pass the cars on Wasatch Boulevard. I heard someone say that you could ride on the shoulder. I don't know if that's true, but if that's not true, it's absolutely crazy to think you need a dedicated bus lane in the canyon, but not on Wasatch Boulevard. So something needs to be done there. It could be lights that, you know, limit one lane to buses only on those certain days or whatever, but that problem's got to be solved. So people will ride buses if they're efficient and reliable, and I've taken the bus myself many times to Solitude. I love the fact that it takes me right to the bottom of the ski lift. I don't have to pay for parking. I don't have to park on the road and walk a mile to get there. I think buses can work. I think it's a solution that would solve the problem here, but I think it's also not necessary to have an additional lane in Little Cottonwood to have the bus solution work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dell. Okay, our next three commenters, if they'd like to come forward. Emily, I don't have a last name, so Emily, I hope you know who you are. Jordan Tenney and Michael Finnerty. We'll start with Emily. Great.
Sorry, I didn't remember to put my last name. Thank you. I don't think people realize how sacred the Cottonwoods are to the Salt Lake residents and recreationists. And to quote from a study of Big, Little, and Mill Creek Canyon that UDOT actually cited in their EIS, referring to Big and Little Cottonwood, these canyons are cherished and many feel a deep, soulful connection to these places. It is also clear that many visitors do not realize the rich social history and the importance of these canyons as watersheds for the valley below. We should start with a solution that can be expanded upon, that impacts the environment and beauty of the canyon the least, and that decreases the traffic problems in the canyons. People have already talked about implementing a toll as well as increasing the buses, and I too support that, not that it really matters. The gondola and 5-lane highway will be present in the canyon during the non-winter months, and we will regret this forever. Nobody would be suggesting to put a gondola or highway through Zion National Park, yet here we are proposing to do the same in what I might argue is just as beautiful of a place. They have a solution in Zion, and I am standing here wondering why we are reinventing the wheel. Earlier, I talked to my legislator. And he told me that I was the only person in his district to reach out to him and tell him that I supported an alternative to the alternatives. So I beg people here who care about Little Cottonwood to reach out to their representatives and communicate what we want to see, if anything. And finally, this is not our land to destroy. It is not UDOT's land to destroy, but it is our responsibility to preserve this canyon. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Jordan.
Hi, my name is Jordan Tenney. I'm a longtime Cottonwood Heights resident. I live in the Golden Hills subdivision, and my main purpose is to address, thank you, the gondola. My understanding is all of this purpose is to solve the traffic problems, but the gondola will not solve that problem. It will also permanently alter and damage the environmental and aesthetic quality of the canyon forever. Finally, it will alter and negatively affect the mouth of the canyon. So first of all, the gondola does not actually solve traffic. It only shifts it and may actually increase it. The gondola is not capable of handling all of the demand. Additionally, there will still be congestion at the base station while entering and exiting and backing up onto the roads and near the neighborhoods. Many people will still be tied to their cars anyway. And finally, a clear argument can be made that traffic will not be reduced at all. If you build it, they will come. With population growth, the same amount of cars will try to enter the canyon and use the gondola. Higher demand will be induced. The traffic problem will not be solved. That is the purpose here. Additionally, this will all come at the cost of environmental and aesthetic degradation without solving traffic. From the bottom to the top of the canyon, it will be blemished and diminished. It's a geological wonder. It should not be ruined in that manner. It will also affect the open space and visual aspect of the canyon. That's undeniable. Additionally, it will affect people's homes and neighborhoods near the base station. And as far as we know, there may not even be a lot of snow in the future anyway. And finally, the mouth of the canyon. Recently, Cottonwood Heights and others protected 26 acres of open space. The base station will be directly across the street from that. It will disrupt the views that were meant to be protected there. There will be new commercialism in the area. And this is a great cost to the canyon, which we all hope to protect. I do not believe the gondola is a good solution. I actually think it is a terrible solution. And that's pretty much it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Michael.
My name is Michael Finnerty. I live adjacent to the park and ride on 9400 South and 20th East. I'm a lifetime resident of Utah. I've lived in Sandy for 35 years now, and I've lived adjacent to that park and ride for 20 years. And I'm here to tell you that given the current proposal for what you're proposing for that mobility hub is not feasible, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, you're looking to put a parking garage in there, or a parking plaza, 3 stories high. That will become the tallest structure in that entire area, including the commercial and retail areas. That becomes the new landmark in that area. And I'll bet there's nobody in here that wants to say, hey, if you need to find my house, you just go to that parking plaza and hang a left. I don't think anybody wants that. I don't want that. The other issue is this. The way that you currently have it proposed, you're going to have the buses routing from Highland Drive up 9510 and then into that parking. And first of all, 9510 is nothing more than just a little residential street. It is not sustainable to be running these buses up and down that at the volume that you want to run it every 5 minutes. Even if you put 1,000 parking spaces in that parking area with the plaza, you run the risk of filling up that parking lot, just like it happens on many community events that we have in the area. And what happens is that everybody starts parking on the interior streets in the residential area, and it becomes impassable. The other issue you have is that you're recommending to put 6 buses staged within feet of the homes that are right there that are adjacent to that parking garage, or that parking lot. The fumes from the diesel and the noise will be insurmountable. I mean, it will be unsustainable. So what I'm asking is first of all, reconsider what you're doing here with that parking lot. What you have proposed, it's not going to work. Because then, in addition to that, as the buses are leaving and going north to 9400, then up the canyon, what happens is that becomes a thoroughfare for the buses instead of a parking lot. So I'm asking you to please reconsider that as a mobility hub. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next three commenters, if they want to come forward, we'll start with John Baker, followed by David Berry, followed by Nancy Bokelli. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. John.
I didn't think there was any way I'd be speaking tonight, so I don't have my comments prepared. I am a landowner in Granite Oaks, which is right adjacent to the proposed base station of the gondola. I'm a large landowner there, in the process of selling land, some of my land. Anyway, while the proposed gondola might negatively impact, or the base station, this tall parking structure might negatively impact my land, I think I'm an engineer looking at the canyon, putting in a highway, or doubling the lanes up the canyon does not make a lot of sense to me. I've traveled the world. I've driven through many, many snow sheds, and they're ugly. I've driven through the Andes from Chile over to Argentina, and snow sheds, they dissolve, the concrete dissolves, it leaks. It's difficult to maintain, do the snow maintenance inside and maintain the lanes. And I think that would be a permanent scar on the canyon. Without the snow sheds, doubling the traffic lanes makes no sense because of the avalanche exposure. So if you're gonna do that, you need the snow sheds, and it's an ugly scar. I'm not qualified to say about capacities and, you know, are we solving a 1-month issue with a 12-month solution? But looking at the alternatives, I know a lot of people are passionate here about give buses a try. I think we've been doing that. Maybe it hasn't been done well, but it feels to me like a head in the sand type wishful thinking as opposed to a permanent solution. The gondola makes sense to me. I don't see it scarring or marring the canyon. I think it preserves the maximum amount of beauty given the options. And finally, it's out of the scope of what you're looking at, but I'd encourage to look at trying to solve so many residents' concerns about widening Wasatch by looking at opportunities to extend the gondola further down into the valley, maybe to Big Cottonwood Canyon or something where the amount of traffic flow could be handled well, and instead of needing to broaden Wasatch, et cetera, you take it down further as a second base station. Those are my thoughts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. David Berry. Is David here? Okay, we'll move to Nancy. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name, Nancy. Thanks for coming up.
It's Nancy Boccoli, rhymes with broccoli, no R. I live in Sandy, 84093. Every alternative presented includes additional parking in the valley, snow sheds on the road, and more buses. Every alternative requires big changes in the canyon and widening Wasatch Boulevard. But none of the alternatives solve the problem of too many cars in the canyon. I use the canyon summer and winter, and it's not just the backed up traffic in the winter, it's the parking lots up and down both Big and Cottonwood Canyon that are completely full on any summer, Saturday and Sunday, and often in the week. There is a better alternative. All buses, no cars. You take the cars out of the equation, you don't need to widen Wasatch, you don't need additional parking lots, you free up the parking lots that Alta and Snowbird pay a lot of money to maintain. They can do something else with them. How do you take the cars out of the canyon? Simple, they do it in Zions. You have a shuttle system, you don't allow private cars. Now obviously there have to be exceptions. Homeowners in the canyon could apply for permits just the way they get dog permits now. Every ski area should have a limited number of permits it can give out to key employees. Canyon Transport should still be able to drive their vans up there. We don't want people with a lot of luggage in the buses. And obviously, emergency vehicles should have full access. The benefits of an all-bus option over any of the proposed options are huge. It's about half the cost of the enhanced bus system with the widened road because you don't need to widen the roads, you don't need to improve the parking lots at the in-canyon uses. It would allow, you'd have a bus to Alta, you'd have a bus to Snowbird, and then you'd have a local bus that stopped at all the places in the canyon where people recreate. And there are many, and those people are ignored by your plan. It would also be better than the other alternatives because buses, as somebody else mentioned, can always be updated. Technology improves, easy to improve that technology. Whoa. So I suggest that you look at an all-bus option, ban private cars with a few permitted exceptions, and I'm sorry for the people that don't want the garages in their backyards, but they have to be somewhere in the valley if we're going to take the cars out of the canyon, because if people have noted, we're not going to put less people in the canyon. But buses also allow us to control the number of people because there won't be that private car option. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay. Our next commenters are Steve Glasser, followed by Joshua Weiss, followed by Rowan Kay. Steve?
So my name is Steve Glazer, and I live in Holiday. And one of the things I absolutely love about this area is the balance that we have between the ability to ski at a resort, recreation areas, and the ability to get in the wilderness and get in the backcountry. And my concern with the gondola solution is that it degrades one of these, specifically the human-powered recreation, and as we try to solve the transportation issues. And I think that the EIS is very deficient in how it evaluates the impacts on non-resort skiers. I could find one sentence where it says, however, some recreation users may see the gondola as a negative visual impact, reducing the quality of the recreation experience. That's not an adequate summary. How many people would say, you know, I really don't want to hike in Little Cottonwood Canyon anymore because I don't want to see the flashing lights on the gondola towers. And the EIS also does not address whether the gondola cars would have to have those flashing lights on them as well, because they're going to be above the 200-foot level for the FAA requires the lighting system. Also, the analysis of the view impacts is very limited. None of the key observation points are on the north side of Little Cottonwood Canyon. None of the key observation points are along the ridge between Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. There's no analysis of visual impacts to people in wilderness areas. I know that the EIS says that, there's an exemption. You can't say, limit development outside the wilderness system because it would impact the wilderness. But at the same time, we're looking at the visual impacts by everybody who's not in the wilderness system right now. We're looking at them if you are on the road up Little Cottonwood Canyon, if you live in Cottonwood Heights, if you are anywhere else. And so therefore we ought to also evaluate the visual impacts on people in the wilderness system as well. And so let's see what a comprehensive evaluation would be. Would all of a sudden we be even overwhelming hikers at the S-curve even more because they're leaving Little Cottonwood Canyon? I don't know. but that needs to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Joshua.
Hi, Joshua Weiss. Thank you for all the effort that went into these proposals. I live in Sandy, 94th and Highland, just like the gentleman who spoke a few minutes ago, in the neighborhood tucked in directly behind the park and ride. And I won't go through all of the arguments he made. He already made them very well. What we've got on the table that I see are two proposals that are high dollar, high impact, regardless of which community you live in. I'm really disappointed that we're not seeing any proposals that are low dollar, low impact. We have resources available right now, and I can tell you that the gentleman who spoke before is correct. A garage at 94th and Highland will ruin our community, our entire neighborhood. It will completely devalue where we live, not only financially, but from an aesthetic standpoint. I haven't seen any plans for how to deal with any of the traffic related to any of that. And so I think that's a huge concern. It really bothers me that I'm not seeing any suggestions when we've got a Shopko and a Fresh Market that are completely empty. There are never cars at those ever. So there are resources available to us now. There are buses available to us now. It would be really nice to see some proposals that are incremental so we can learn what impacts really are. We could use these parking lots. We could add on buses. We can get data-driven decisions on how those solutions would work. I'd also be interested to hear about a compensatory proposal. If you're going to devalue and ruin my community, I'd like to know what you can do to compensate us. I find it very frustrating that there's nothing related to that in any of this. We're talking about $500 million. I cannot get my head around that. And as far as the usage numbers are concerned, to me it seems like it's 15 to 30 days a year where it's really a problem. I know some people have suggested some other numbers. I don't have an accurate number on that. But $500 million to deal with an intermittent issue seems like there's a lot left on the table that hasn't been explored yet. And I'd really like to see a little bit more about what low dollar, low impact solutions could be proposed. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Joshua. Is Rowan present? Rowan K? All right. We will move to, we have one more comment card that was submitted, so this will be the last one this evening. Scott Stoddard, are you here? Great, Scott, come on up.
Hello, I am Scott Stoddard, and I'm a video game designer from Murray, Utah. I love Little Cottonwood Canyon. Over the past year, I have gone there almost every day. Through all 4 seasons, somewhere between 200 and 300 times, I would guess. It's hard to put into words the powerful feelings when entering the canyon. As the cliffs cascade into view, it washes over you and it never gets old. Of those hundreds of times that I've entered the canyon over the past year, I have encountered traffic problems exactly 0 times. To be fair, I tend to avoid heavy snow days because it interferes with my primary use of the canyon, which is hiking and bouldering. I also tend to go in the afternoon during the colder winter months. This leaves me with the impression that the traffic problems being discussed overwhelmingly affect one kind of canyon user, skiers, and even those at relatively limited times during the year. As a game designer, I recognize that every project needs design pillars that govern decisions. I appreciate the goal of consistent travel times to the resorts, but what about travel times to our beloved and historic boulder areas? What about travel times to the beautiful open views of the canyon? Those things will be gone. the travel time will be infinite. And it's hard to look at these plans that would destroy those things in order to make travel time to a ski resort a couple times a year a few minutes faster. It seems like a bad trade-off. I would like to see UDOT create and publish renderings that accurately portray the gondola system from popular scenic viewpoints and bouldering areas in the canyon so that the public can see what it would do. I really liked, when I listened to the podcasts, the tolling system I think is really good. It's cheap, you can put it in quickly, it's changeable, you can iterate, you can learn a lot from it. You could do that next year. I don't know how long it takes to create, but a lot faster than putting in these other systems. And I mean, try 20 bucks, try 30 bucks, try 200 bucks. One day would be really uncomfortable, but a lot less uncomfortable than a permanent gondola system that costs $500 million. Let's learn from that quickly with better busing and get real proof that these things will actually solve the problem and not just go off of these designs and do these crazy things without more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. This will conclude the public hearing, the official public hearing session of this open house and public hearing tonight. Just a reminder, as you leave, that even if you spoke tonight, even for those of you who were called upon and spoke tonight, you can still give longer comments on the website form, via email, in every form that's listed on the website. So we encourage you to still provide additional comments through all the forms that are available to you. We've received 3,000 comments thus far when we released the draft EIS, and the comment period runs through September 3rd. It was just extended to a 70-day comment period, and so we invite you to continue to make comments and encourage those who weren't able to be here with us tonight to either participate in the virtual hearing a week from tonight where they can provide oral comments, or again, comment in any other way that we have listed on the project website. Again, a reminder that comments tonight are treated equally with all types of comments that we receive. So you don't have to provide an oral comment, but you're welcome to next week at the virtual hearing, and welcome to provide, again, more comments. Just a reminder as you leave, if you didn't sign in, please do so that we have a public record of who was here tonight and a recording of Josh's presentation that started this hearing, and all of those who spoke will be available on the project website tomorrow. We want to extend our appreciation above all to the civility, decorum, and cooperation that all showed tonight, to everyone who commented, whether you agreed with their comments or not, and that you allowed them to speak uninterrupted for the time that was allotted. We really appreciate everyone participating and helping everything to go well during this hearing. And we look forward to receiving more of your comments and reading through those. Thanks for your attendance tonight.